Hi everyone, welcome to the Insurer Latam Forum 2021. My name is Matías Gorosito. I'm the Vice President of CMS Group, and I will have the honor to introduce this amazing event that gathers every year all the Latin American leaders of the Insurer ecosystem to debate about the future of the industry. On each day, we will have at least one international conference translated to Portuguese and Spanish, followed then by a local conference for Hispanic market or and Brazilian market. So you will be able to generate further opportunities attending to what's happening in each region. Now let me tell you that I'm not only happy for meeting you again in this event, but also very proud to announce that currently we have more than 3,000 decision makers on board. So I want to thank all these exclusive audience that follow us every year, and of course the new ones who are joining for their first time. Also, I want to thank our partners for creating this experience to every corner of reaching all the Latin American InsurTech ecosystem, and especially our sponsors for supporting us, making this innovation event greater. By the way, they invite you to visit the Expo module. There you will find exclusive content in every virtual stand and very helpful information to get engaged with the brand. Some more comments about the features of the platform that will allow you to boost your experience and business opportunities. In the attendees module, you will find the people that is on board like you. And there you will find the chance to exchange your contact information, to chat, to match agendas with many people based on your interests. During the live conferences, do not lose the chance to ask you all your questions on the fireside engagement, which is the box placed at the right of the streaming. And also in the program module, you will find the on-demand content, which is special content like interviews to subject matter experts, highlighted content from other events, and much more. Finally, all the interaction that you will make will add points to your engagement game, and the top 3 persons will earn amazing prizes that already were announced previously in this event. Now let me introduce the moderator of this opening session. He's the founder and CEO of Digital Insurance Latam. He's the leader of the Insurer Latam ecosystem, and my friend Hugues, Bertin. Welcome to the Insurer Latam Forum.
Hello, Mati. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to launch this new InsurTech Latam Forum 2021. So with a very special guest for the next 3 days. So thank you so much to be with us today. I am very happy for that. But as you know, like an entrepreneur, like an InsurTech, there are always some topics, some issues. And as you know, today we have a personal issue for Nigel Walsh from Google that cannot be with us. And that is the amazing word of the entrepreneur. Thank you so much for Hugh, Terry, and Simon Phipps. I'm going to present because we are today 2 amazing speakers with us, perhaps 2 principal main leaders in the insurance innovation, InsurTech space in the world, with us in Latin America for the first time. So please, I'm going to present Hugh Terry and Simon Phipps. Both are founder of the Digital Insurer, that is the world's largest knowledgeable base and online community of more than 40,000 professionals of insurance who share a common purpose of working together to accelerate the digital transformation of insurance. In my opinion, that is the best database, best community in the world. And today we have with us Hugh Terry, that is an actuary. So it's a problem, but we love the actuary in our space. And we have Simon Phipps, that is both with a lot of years of experience, principally in life, general insurance, asset management. For example, Simon Phipps was previously KPMG lead partner for insurance advisory and digital innovation and CEO of Aviva Hong Kong. So please, thank you so much, Simon. Thank you so much, Hugh, to be with us. And I give you the digital floor. And please, for the audience, you can send us questions in the chat, because after the presentation, I will display a lot of questions and share with Hugh and Simon. So Simon, Hugh, to you.
Yeah, thank you, Matías, for your opening, and Hugues, thank you very much for your very kind words at the start. Look, all I can say really on behalf of both Simon and myself is how excited we are to be here, the opportunity to talk to you on our favourite subject, right? How is digital going to transform the insurance industry? And this is the first session of 3 days, and I really hope that you get an enormous amount out of all the speakers, all the content that is available, and I really wish you well on your digital transformation. So Simon and I are going to speak for about 30 minutes in total, and I think we've set aside some time at the end, as Hugues mentioned, for questions. So please do keep those questions coming whilst we're talking, and then we can have a good chat at the end as well. So let me share my screen, and I thought I would just amplify and maybe introduce the digital insurer just for 1 minute. So hopefully now you can see that screen in front of you, and let me just introduce and build on what Hugues was saying really, which is, you know, we are very proud to be double geeks, right? We love the insurance industry and we love technology, and we love working together with people all around the world on how we can accelerate this digital transformation. And of course, you'll see we've got things like tech, we've got ways you can connect with us, we've also got learning. And I'll come back and talk to you just a little bit at the end about learning, because I think it's relevant to what we want to talk to you today. And what I'd like to do, just to frame this 30-minute discussion, what we're going to do, and the title of the topic is pick out 6 key trends that we think are driving this digital transformation in the insurance industry. Trends that were here yesterday are going to be here tomorrow, ones that are unstoppable. But as we're at the start of the conference, let's just even step back from that. Let's get high up in our helicopter and let's think about history and the tide of human history. So this chart speaks to the industrial revolutions that we've been through. And I think we're all very familiar with the first, the second, and the third industrial revolutions. Now, Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum a few years ago coined the term for the fourth industrial revolution, and he described it as the merging of humankind with technology. A very exciting time with exponential change, with enormous opportunity ahead of us, but also challenges that we need to acknowledge and work together to overcome. Now, when we look at this impact of technology over the last 200 years, I think when you look at some of the objective facts, you can see how positive this has been for humankind. And I'm just going to, because I'm an actuary, I'm going to choose life expectancy, of course. So on the left-hand side, just see the impact these industrial revolutions have had on our longevity. We are living longer and healthier lives than ever before. And then on the right-hand side, you see some data around poverty. And you can see over the last 20, 30, 40 years in particular, how much poverty has reduced. Now, of course, we have challenges at the moment with COVID, which we need to overcome together. But I think we can have confidence that as we go into this even faster pace of digital change, this fourth industrial revolution, if we manage it well, we will continue to reap the benefits as part of humankind more broadly. So, the 6 global digital trends that Simon and I are going to focus on for the rest of this presentation. You can see them here in front of you: the digital consumer, social platforms, tech enablers, risk partnering, new business models, and workplace transformation. So we'll go through each of these in turn, and hopefully you'll agree with us that these are the 6 key trends. But if you think we've missed some, please do let us know, and we'll talk about it at the end as well. So Simon, as usual, great pleasure to be presenting with you. I'll hand over to you for the digital consumer.
Yeah, thank you, Hugh, and hi everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. Hugh, I can't actually see your screen, so it'll be interesting to navigate through this, and you'll have to bear with me if we end up on the wrong slides. But anyway, I'm sure that's my fault, being technically incompetent over here. But look, it's no coincidence that we're starting this session with 6 key trends focused on the customer, the lifeblood of every business, and more specifically, we're starting with the digital consumer. And one thing I'm pretty sure of today is that everyone who's listening all around Latam and potentially all around the world, to some degree, you're already a digital consumer. So you know some of what I'm going to mention now. And the first thing I'm going to say is that our behaviors are changing. Next slide, Hugh, please. It's changing in many ways, but one of the most profound ways is that we can now access pretty much any information around the world instantly, anytime, any place. And because of that, we now expect it. And we're living and sharing our life experiences more and more in real time on the smartphone. And we're prioritizing more immediate and convenient forms of communication. And soon, there's going to be an even more profound transformation coming. And Hugh's going to smile at this because I'm going to mention the Internet of Value enabled through blockchains and DLTs. So lots of things are changing our behaviors, but it's not just our behaviors that are changing, it's our expectations too. Next slide, please, Hugh. We've got new types of companies that are reframing what good looks like. And these companies, some of which you can see up on the screen, hopefully in front of you, these companies are focusing on solving consumer pain points like never before, and or creating new market opportunities through the use of new technology. And we as consumers love them, and so do the stock markets. So with these kind of success stories so clear for us all to see, it raises a key question, I think, for all of us in insurance. We are all consumers, right? We know what we like. So why aren't we more aggressively focused on this in our day jobs? I think all too often we forget that we are consumers in insurance. We forget what we like. When we turn up for work, perhaps when COVID's not around, into the office, the customer kind of becomes an abstract third-party persona for us all to manage. And yet we're all consumers. We know what we like, so we should be applying that much more aggressively in our day jobs, in insurance companies in particular. And stepping up our game in insurance has never been more important. Why? Well, of course, because of COVID-19. Next slide, please, Hugh. Believe it or not, it was in March last year, Hugh, that Hugh and I sort of wrote and then issued a paper on behalf of TDI, and it's proved to be our most popular paper ever, especially amongst executive teams and boards around the world. And it's available for free here, I think, via the link that we've just shared. The essence of this article is that consumer adoption of digital is being accelerated by COVID-19. It's not just now people like us, everybody on this conference, that are using digital more, but there are whole swathes of new people, new groups of people using digital technologies for the first time. Like the elderly, my parents, for the first time ever, have had to use the internet to order online food. My kids, and I'm sure many of your children, remote education, and many people in less developed nations have been forced to kind of adopt new technologies just to survive. The consumer adoption tipping point, the dot on the screen that you can see here, it represents the point after which there's no going back, and digital for consumers becomes kind of mainstream. And we would have been a few years off, I think, achieving that until COVID came along. But now, arguably, we're already there. And this has big implications for insurance. And this was the essence, really, of the article that we issued to our industry. It was a warning to the industry. We were behind the curve before COVID came along. And after COVID, consumers across industries will have accelerated up the curve beyond tipping point, and their expectations will have been raised like never before. So if we don't step up our efforts now, we'll be further behind after COVID as an industry, more vulnerable to competitors and potential new entrants. And we estimated then, and we stand by this estimate now, that most insurers lost 2 years off their transformation roadmaps just to stand still. Now, that doesn't have to be really scary. This is addressable for insurers with the right priorities and the right resources allocated. But there's no doubt this is a period of time in which it is definitely survival of the fittest. And this might seem quite daunting for insurers and not particularly exciting, but it's hugely exciting for us as consumers, because actually we've got a whole new world of more exciting and interesting and engaging insurance to look forward to. I want to end this sort of first key trend with a quick video clip from Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon, who many of you will be familiar with, on the secret of their success. And while you're watching it, just think about us in insurance and being honest, which are we mostly obsessed with, customers or competitors? Hugh, please roll the video.
Okay, Simon, I'm just going to try and share this presentation because I've been told we can't see it. So let's get that sorted first if we can. So,
well, that might explain why I couldn't see it then, Hugh. So it wasn't just user error at my end.
Sorry, it was my fault then. Right, hopefully you can see this presentation. I apologise to everyone for that. Let's play the video.
Yeah.
But the number one thing that has made us successful by far is obsessive, compulsive focus on the customer. As opposed to obsession over the competitor. And I talk so often to other CEOs and some other CEOs and also founders and entrepreneurs. And I can tell that even though they're talking about customers, they're really focusing on competitors. And it is a huge advantage to any company if you can stay focused on your customer instead of your competitor. So then you have to identify who is your customer. So at the Washington Post, for example, is the customer the people who buy advertisements from us? No, the customer is the reader. Full stop. The customer is the reader. And then, by the way, where do advertisers want to be? Advertisers want to be where there are readers. So it's really not that complicated. You know, it comes around really well.
So for me, that was a really profound clip because Hugh and I, we see so many people from the insurance industry coming to us all the time, and all they're interested in is what the competitors are up to. And, you know, as Jeff would say, that's not really a priority question. There are much more important things like what do our customers want, and then how do we meet those needs and beat them. Anyway, let's move on to our second key trend. And this is social platforms, and really one of the key behavioral change enablers for digital consumers. Next slide, please. The rise in connectivity through social platforms over the last few years has been remarkable, and it's still rising. Over half the world's population, 4.2 billion people, are now connected, almost all of them via smartphones and mobiles, with 13% growth just last year. Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp still dominate, but new platforms are on the rise. Next slide, please, Hugh. And there's an interesting kind of observation in this chart here to note the growing role of social platforms for search, especially amongst younger users. Social networks are actually outperforming now search engines like Google for the 16 to 24-year-olds. Next slide, please. And we're also seeing a rise in the trend for in-the-moment and live and authentic experiences, hence the recent rise in things like TikTok and Clubhouse. And there's a great quote here in the middle of your screen on what all this means for insurance. Unfortunately, I can't remember who said this to me, but being an authentic kind of guy, I'm not going to take the credit for it, but I'm going to read it out. My advice for insurance companies is to focus on the human voice first, instead of focusing on rates and fees. Define your target audience and create content which is perfectly tailored to them. Step up your influence marketing game and definitely don't be afraid of social media. I think that's a great quote, some great advice for many insurers. Next slide, please, Hugh. But despite the rise in popularity, social media is actually plagued with one of the same critical challenges as our insurance industry, and that's trust, or rather, a relative lack of trust. Financial services, including insurance, with social media is right at the bottom of the pile. You can see on the left-hand side of this chart. Compare that to the technology sector right over on the other side. So maybe, as well as working hard to improve our own trust scores in insurance, maybe our industry can find ways to work more with tech where consumer trust is higher. And that feels like a perfect segue into Hugh's next key trend on tech enablers. Next slide, please, Hugh, and over to you.
Thank you, Simon. I apologise to everyone for not sharing the screen, but hopefully you got the essence of what Simon was saying on the customer platforms. Now, technology. And I think to put this into context, right, we have probably more technology available to us than any time in human history. And we sat back earlier in this year, towards the end of last year actually, and did this tech map, the TDI tech map. And it was really looking at the different types of technology. And as you can see on the axis on the left-hand side, we were looking at the end state impact of insurance from low to very high. And on the right-hand side, on the y-axis, on the x-axis, sorry, we looked at how well established that technology was. We've got a white paper on that, but one of the key takeaways that we took, and I think is almost obvious, is really this point that the technology here is available to us, and probably the key challenge for us is to work out how to implement that within the insurance industry. How do we use the technology that's available today to catch up? Of course, we do need to anticipate these future trends, and I'm sure there are many of you who are working at bringing new technologies into the industry as well. Now, here at TDI, we've looked at technology on two critical dimensions, and we call this the TDI InsurTech wheel. And what you can see on the left-hand side is technologies that we can deploy to improve our value chain in insurance. So that's whether that's claims, underwriting, other aspects of delivering insurance. And we're all about, on that side, it's all about improving today. And many of us work in business as usual and are looking to use technology to improve the way we run our current operations. Contrast that with the right-hand side, which is about reinventing tomorrow, the new digital business models that are available, where actually technology is more than just the enabler. In some respects, it's becoming part of the product and certainly part of the delivery dimensions. And the interesting thing on this, and we may come back to this a little bit later, is very different skills are needed to execute the left-hand side of the hemisphere from the right-hand side of the hemisphere. And the importance of people in this transformation effort is something that we'll come back to a couple of times during this presentation as well. So that's a little bit on tech enablers. The fourth global trend that we wanted to talk about, for me, is possibly one of the most interesting ones around risk partnering. And what do we mean by that? So this chart sort of tries to get to this and sort of look at how historically what we've done as a business is deliver on a promise of trust. And that trust says, when you have an adverse event, our insurance will be there to pay that claim for you. So we use that word indemnification. Now, what's happening that's different now is that we are able to use technology to help customers to reduce and eliminate risk. And guess what? The honest customer values those things more than making the claim, because they actually don't really want to make that claim for adverse events. So where we're seeing technology helping customers to keep their homes safe, to help them to become better drivers, to help them to live healthier lives, we're seeing risk management and risk reduction coming to the fore. And I thought I'd just share with you a little bit around health, which I think is one of the most interesting areas of insurance. And if you look at what's been happening with technology, is obviously we're seeing enormous growth in lifestyle diseases. So I referred earlier to that increase in life expectancy. But of course, because we've been so successful at that, we're starting to get diseases that our DNA has not been designed to cope with. So these lifestyle diseases are a key issue for us. But guess what? Technology is allowing us to increasingly detect early signs of disease. And the earlier we can get in and manage those diseases, the better the outcome for us as individuals, and of course, the lower the cost is as well. So a fantastic win-win for consumers. And then what we're starting to see in the health industry in particular, with insurers actually on both life and health, they're starting to think about how they can engage with customers as well. So if you think about the healthcare value chain that starts with the healthcare consumer, ends with finances and risk managers, what we're seeing is insurers jumping up and saying, how can I provide directly to customers services that will help them to get access to medical cover more easily, services that will help them to manage their health and wealth as they go forward. And this is a classic change that has enormous impact upon the industry as we go forward, the changing nature of the fundamental service that we're providing, because technology is allowing us to do this in ways we haven't been able to do so before. Now that probably is an example of an emerging new digital business model, and I guess that enables me to hand over to Simon, who's going to cover this fifth trend for us.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. And this is a particularly exciting, but I guess also potentially challenging key trend: new digital business models. There are lots of new models out there, as Hugh just sort of showed on the InsurTech wheel. There's a whole bunch of them on the right-hand side. We don't have time to cover them all, so instead we're just going to focus on a few kind of key trends within this broader trend of new models that we think have got actually quite a lot of applicability all around the world. I wanted to start with something, if you just flick on a slide, Hugh, please, that at TDI we call digital first models. And it's a kind of an area in which new tech is at the heart of the business model. And we see this as hugely exciting for our industry, an opportunity to create new market space. And to explain why, we need to look no further than global photography. And what we've got on the screen at the moment on the left-hand side, that shows the number of digital photos taken around the world between 2010 and 2017, and it increased significantly. The right-hand chart shows the percentage of photographs that were taken by mobile phones. And you can see, again, just how significant that increase was as a percentage done through the phone. And what that means when you put those two charts together is that the smartphone caused the photography boom. And the same is going to happen in insurance. As insurance becomes more accessible and embedded in smartphones, we're going to see an exponential increase in the number of policies around the world. Next slide, please, Hugh. We use this model a lot. We call it the TDI sort of pyramid. And at the top of this pyramid, in the grey triangle, this represents our existing world, our physical first world that we all live in insurance today. Lots of buildings, lots of people, lots of paperwork. And this world, of course, is going to become increasingly digitally enabled. And actually, we remain bullish about the potential for that physical first, increasingly digitally enabled world as it evolves, not least of which because of all the emerging market potential around the world. But there's a whole new world of opportunity also opening up for the first time, enabled through new technology. And that's going to allow insurers to make money on much smaller bits of insurance than they've ever done before. These digital first models will often still need human involvement to work, but they represent new market space and a really exciting new era for insurance. So because of that, we expect the volume of policies to therefore sort of increase exponentially over the next few years, just like with digital photos and the growth that was enabled for that sort of segment through the smartphone. But of course, many of these insurance policies are going to be much, much smaller than we're used to today. Next slide, please, Hugh. On the left-hand side of the sort of slide in front of you here, you've got a pyramid with volume at the top of it. And that shows just how policy volume will increase as you move down the digital first models, down that pyramid. But the right-hand pyramid shows the value per policy. and how that equally reduces as you go down through these models. So essentially, these digital first models are going to be scale plays. To make money, insurers are going to need to go beyond just new tech systems. They're going to need to bring in new products, use new profit models and new processes. On the far left-hand side of this chart, you can see some of the brands that are already operating across these different models. So I guess a key question for incumbent insurers is going to be whether they move down the pyramid directly themselves or through partnerships with others that may already be better placed to serve customers in these new ways. And this leads us to our second new model category that I'm going to touch on. Next slide, please, Hugh. And that's platforms and ecosystems. And these are already forging a really strong foothold in Asia, with China really leading the world through companies like Ping An and Zhong'an. And they'll be coming to a market near you soon if they haven't already. These companies are unlocking value by offering broader, multi-dimensional products and services to their customers. Next slide, please, Hugh. And finding ways to participate in these platforms and ecosystems is hugely attractive for insurers. Insurers have always struggled with relevance and the lack of frequency of connectivity with their customers. Look how many more interactions social media and tech companies have versus insurers on this chart. Next slide, please. And customers love these platforms and ecosystems too. They love it when insurers go beyond the traditional products and services and extend partner products and services to them. This is some research from Bain we've got in front of us now, and many of you will know they invented the Net Promoter Score, and I'm guessing lots of you listening today will be using NPS as a primary customer metric in your companies. This chart clearly shows by the red dots that insurers offering ecosystem products and services that go beyond the insurer's core products get the highest NPS scores. So there's lots of compelling evidence that platforms and ecosystems play an increasing role in insurance. The key question, I think, for insurers in this area is how they engage. Do they become a controller of a platform or ecosystem? Do they partner within it, or are they just a provider of insurance? Or are they all three, or some combination thereof? Next slide, please, Hugh. I couldn't not mention direct in this little segment because as new tech is being deployed, the real true potential of lower prices is being exposed. This chart just shows an example of term insurance in China being 75% cheaper for the same product when it's a fully digital product. Now, of course, these sort of differences don't mean that consumers are going to want to buy everything directly, but for commodity products where no help is needed, why wouldn't they? And of course, as pricing transparency increases across markets, so does the consumer's understanding of what fair value looks like. And on that note, let's flick on to the next slide. That takes us to our next kind of, model, and that's aggregators and digital brokers. These are loved by consumers, often hated by insurers, transparent marketplaces where only the fittest survive. In the UK, 75% of home and motor new business is now placed via aggregators, and the industry has seen significant margin erosion, arguably also not all good consequences for the consumer, nevertheless hugely popular. Aggregators in particular are not yet fully established across Asia, but the tide of interest is rising, and I'm sure that will be the case in your market too. So let's now turn to the last new model in this kind of section from me. Next slide, please, Hugh. And that relates to the world of agency. There are millions of agents around the world, and TDI is very bullish generally on the outlook for this part of the distribution marketplace. We see the model evolving quite quickly. Currently, most markets are on a journey from the traditional sales agent in the bottom left-hand corner on this chart to what we call the digitally enabled quality agent models. But there's a new game in town, and we call that the Omni Advisor. In many ways, the perfect agent through the eyes of the consumer, akin to a private banking relationship manager. All knowing, all controlling, all helping, enabling the consumer to access information, products and services however they want, where they want and when they want. Now, myself and Hugh did a white paper on this new model too, and that's also available via the link that we'll share with you now. So let's turn to the final slide from me. Next slide, please, Hugh. when we look out a few years at TDI into how insurance will be distributed, we see a world in which platforms and ecosystems have become much more integral to what we do and how we do it. Insurance and bank advisors will be working hand in hand with many of these platform and ecosystem companies. And of course, all of this has profound implications for what people in distribution are doing and how they do it. So I'm now going to hand back to Hugh to take a look at that specific topic and our final key trend. Next slide, please, Hugh. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And I want to just do a couple of minutes on this last trend on workplace transformation. And I guess it almost goes without saying that we've seen perhaps the most radical change in the way that we work over the last 18 months. But in many respects, these trends to workplace transformation have been in place for a number of years. The increasing adoption of technology, the increasing number of people who can work on what's in this slide talks about a contingent basis, but more flexible working. People are able to have more choice. And of course, the key to digital transformation is always about people, right? And certainly we're very bullish on the insurance industry in terms of the need for this human touch as we go forward, as Simon just mentioned. But I think when we look at ourselves in the insurance industry, we know that we need to focus on how we can transform ourselves, reskilling, and also how we can transform our organisations and make them more fit and ready for this digital age that we are in. And this is something that's exercised Simon and I and others at TDI for a number of years. And a couple of years we sort of sat back and said, look, we need to do something here. We've got knowledge, we've got community. We need to think about reskilling and what we can offer in terms of more formalised learning and development. And then as we got into this, we started to realise it was a little bit more complex than just reskilling. And in fact, when you look at the data, there's a bigger picture here and a requirement for actually organisations to think about how they can enhance, adopt, accelerate a digital culture. So we're in an era where it's not about just the individual, it's about how we work together as teams. And this data from Boston Consulting Group is quite conclusive. It says that companies that fail to address culture change do not have success in digital transformation. So we realised that when we sort of started to design our learning and development programs, we wanted to do more than just reskill. We wanted to look at how we can help organisations establish a digital culture. And of course, that doesn't mean that it's all about everyone becoming a tech genius, right? It's about how all of us in our different roles can contribute to this digital era. And guess what? It's such a broad topic that most people who want to can find a way in digital, whether it's through customer experience, redesigning customer journeys, whether it's data and analytics, enormous opportunities for all of us to be part of this digital future. So that was really why we sort of invested in and launched a couple of years ago the TDI Academy to help reskilling and enhance digital culture. And the really good news is that we've actually had some programs available in Latam for a while, which is fantastic through Hugues and his partners there as well. And we have another program coming up in a couple of months as well. So we're really pleased to be able to sort of share this knowledge and framework around the TDI Academy. And I guess that's, for us, is one of the key things, is the people side of this technology transformation. So these were the 6 global trends. And of course, COVID has delivered, a bit of a wake-up call that business as usual is not sustainable. Now, as we said earlier, this doesn't mean to say you just replace business as usual with something else. There's time for us to improve business as usual as well as create those new digital business models. But I just wanted to leave you with one slide, really, which is kind of a summary slide if you sort of try to boil this down into some of the key takeaways. So there's this sort of circular picture here. The bullseye is the customer. Be customer obsessed, as Jeff Bezos told us. Ecosystem friendly, because that's how customers are going to find our insurance solutions. And then let's not forget about the human touch, because although some insurance products can be made simple, many are still very complex for customers who may only buy these products once or twice or very infrequently. And then last but not least, let's work together to transform the workplace and enhance that digital culture. And what that should enable us to do is address, if you remember that Edelman slide, how we can build back trust in the insurance industry. So that's it from Simon and I, and it's been a real pleasure to talk, and we hope there's some questions as well. If you do want to get in touch with TDI, there's a few options here, including a get in touch link that you should see, or just search for us on the website for the digital insurer. Back to you, Hughes.
So, thank you so much, Simon. Thank you so much, Hugh, for your presentation. That is amazing. I think that you have designed 6 global digital trends in insurance. So for the audience, I think that it's important to make a summary. So digital consumer is changing. Social platform is a key point. Tech enablers, risk partnering, new model, and workplace transformation. I think that these 6 transformation, these 6 global trends are very important for us. So my first question, and please for the audience, you can send us a question, to make some question to Hugh and Simon. But I'm going to begin with a first question for the last 10 minutes. Because in Latin America, we are a little bit late if we compare with Europe, US, and Asia. And we know that you know very well Asia. And my question is, if we can analyze and copy a good transformation in Asia, what are the main examples? So, example you like.
Yeah, that's such a nice question. I'll let Hugh answer that one.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna go with one that you probably all know, about, and it's Zhongyang, right? And we had our first conference, and we in Hong Kong in 2016, and we had Zhongyang presenting, and I remember they put up a slide where they showed that they'd sold 1 billion policies, and the audience gasped, right? How can you sell 1 billion policies? And this gets to, Simon's example of digital photos, right? And what Zhongyang had done and started to create ecosystems where they were hooked into e-commerce and were able to sell deposit refund insurance that was embedded into that broader e-commerce transaction. So that type of approach of working with ecosystem e-commerce partners to get large numbers of customers, I think is a great way to start. I don't think it's sufficient, because as we've said, you then need to work out how do you bring in a brand building exercise, build in human relationships and touch points so that you can actually provide consumers with more. But for me, Zhongyang at that time was a fantastic standout example. Of course, there are loads and loads in Asia.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add to that, Hugh, if I may. Thanks, Hugh. I mean, I think people assume that because Asia's got markets like Hong Kong and China that it's all really cutting edge, but actually it's not. Asia's a big region with lots of different markets, lots of markets that are undeveloped. Very mixed. I think maybe just like Latam. So don't assume that just because you hear 1 or 2 sort of really interesting stories that the whole of Asia is way ahead. That's not the case at all. I think in many ways, because Asia is less developed as a region for insurance, maybe a bit like Latam, it has less legacy. It's got less sort of ingrained problems, and therefore it's been quicker to adopt some new technologies in some markets. I think that when I say quicker, the standout insurer across the whole of Asia that everybody refers to all the time that's transformed themselves is Ping An, right? Ping An is the epitome of an ecosystem-orientated tech at its core insurance company now. It's taken them over 20 years to transform, right? And they're quite an unusual example. Many insurers in Asia haven't yet cracked it, but they are dropping in new technology, perhaps in more quickly in some ways. The other last comment I would make is that from a society point of view, one or two markets like China are much more mobile orientated and kind of digital money orientated. It's just ingrained in the culture, and of course the governments have driven and accelerated that. So there are some kind of societal opportunities in one or two markets in Asia that don't exist in markets like the UK or the US. But yeah, I'd put Ping An alongside Hugh's Zhong'an, just have a couple of hands there, both from China.
Great. So Zhong'an for embedded insurance and perhaps Ping An for insurance ecosystem. A short question that is a real question in Latin America. In the case of a traditional career with a broker, with intermediation, the question is, who is the customer?
Well, it is possible to have two types of customers, and I think and I think you have to accept that reality. If you want to provide a service and to be competitive with brokers, you better treat your brokers as customers in the same way that you treat the end customer as well. And I think it's not easy, but if you can kind of bring technology to bear that your brokers can enjoy and also help to make consumers' lives easier, then you can create a win-win type scenario as well. But I think you have to still remain focused on that end consumer as well, ultimately, because that's also what your broker will want, is delivering good value to the end consumer.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Hugh, because I was just going to jump on that just to sort of finish it off. And then go back to that Jeff Bezos little clip. He made the very clear point, right, that actually the consumer is the end consumer, and all the middlemen, the business-to-business partners and stuff will all be happy if the consumer base is growing and they're happy with what you're doing. So fully agree, business to business, of course, you've got to give good service and invest in tech and take the distributors and stuff with you. But you can do a lot worse than focus on the end consumer, then everyone's going to want to work with you.
Great. So we have some questions, a lot of questions. So thank you so much for the audience to send questions. So I'm going to read a question. What do you think about a possible decentralized insurance movement, like a big community not regulated by any government? So I think that we are talking about perhaps some peer-to-peer model without any regulation. So what is your opinion about that? What a question, huh?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll start on this. Hugh will smile because I'm a self-declared sort of blockchain enthusiast, okay? And obviously this new DLT technology will enable these kind of peer-to-peer models. If you wind back the clock on insurance started with the mutuality model, right, where everybody looked out for each other and there weren't the shareholder overheads and some of the other frictional costs that have now developed as companies have become shareholder-based, shareholder-owned. So, I'm kind of one of the industry's most frustrated sort of professionals. I've been in this industry 30 years and I love it. And it frustrates me we haven't moved as fast as we should have done. And particularly because I think of myself as a customer and I look at these things and think these could be so much better. So I think peer-to-peer models are going to challenge the existing industry because the industry is not moving fast enough, frankly. The technology is moving quicker. And we're seeing little examples popping up of peer-to-peer and community-based insurers where they're building traction quite quickly. Right now, just the other day, I think a good friend of ours, a business friend of ours, bought by many in the UK, just closed out. I think it was a 350 million raise, Hugh, was it, on a Series D valuation of 2 billion. And they're not full peer-to-peer, but they're kind of community of interest-based insurers it's really striking a positive nerve, right, with consumers, and they're loving it. So I think in some markets, like the UK, as an example, the US maybe, there's quite a lot of frustration with insurers, the legacy insurers, because they've made too much profit. They haven't been quick enough to innovate. So consumers are open to new things, and therefore these new models are going to be quite attractive. Whether or not we'll get to a point in which we have a peer-to-peer business that's unregulated by anywhere in the world is another question. And of course, that raises questions around the integrity of the way that sort of business could be run if there's no governance around it whatsoever other than peer-based governance, right? But the technology's there to do that. Hugh.
Yeah, I think just very quickly, on the downside, pure peer-to-peer has a problem because unlike sort of peer-to-peer lending, the risks are in the opposite direction. So that means that you could end up not delivering to a customer. So there is a tendency for these models to have to be regulated to protect the customer. But that's not necessarily a negative thing. I think the question would then be is how do you regulate outside of a government, and can there be self-regulating mechanisms? But I think the bigger point which you already made was the importance of community, right? And that's a back to the future approach. So if you think about mutuality and the history of insurance, it was when like-minded people came together to actually solve a problem. I think people love community, and I think when you know your community, then you know the products and services you can provide, and that is sort of a much more attractive approach. When you look at, say, USAA, which is one of the largest insurers, it provides insurance services to the military and their families, right? And then it's very, very focused and it knows its customers. And that's an example of a very successful, very large organisation. It just knows who its customers are and the community and what they need around insurance, not just insurance itself.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps the last question, if we have time, from Matías. Yes, I think that we have time for the last question. You've talked a lot about platform and ecosystem. So if I am an insurer, I say, okay, I need to compete with them. I need to compete with platform, with ecosystem. So my question is, I understand on the other side that you invite insurer to convert and to transform the business model into a platform, into an ecosystem. So my question is, what are the 2 or 3 tips to give to the insurer in order to build an ecosystem or a digital platform in insurance? What are the 2 or 3 tips?
Maybe I'll start with that, Hugh, and then hand over to you. Thanks. That's a good question, both of you. My immediate reaction to that question is you can't push against the tide of platforms and ecosystems, so you should go with the tide and actually seek out opportunities to engage and work with platforms and ecosystems, see them as a distribution opportunity and an opportunity to extend the proposition and then reinforce customer advocacy for your own brand by working with these other providers. That way, you extend your reach and you stay relevant. If you see platforms and ecosystems as competitive, then you run the risk of narrowing your market and losing out on many, many new opportunities. And we could talk about open insurance and where that might go over time, right? There's going to be a whole world of new opportunity for insurers if you keep your eyes and mind open. I think the old world of try and do everything ourselves, everyone's a competitor, I think is kind of counterintuitive to the way that the world is going, the way that successful businesses generally need to go. But that's just my broad observation. Hugh?
Yeah, so for me, it's a world of ecosystems within ecosystems, right? And if you're an insurer, I would focus on risk reduction and mitigation services and creating an ecosystem that can deliver that value to a customer, because that's space that we have the ability to claim, right, legitimately. And then I would say, okay, now how does that ecosystem fit within larger ecosystems? And I'd start really thinking about how I could modernize my technology through the use of, say, APIs and microservices, so that I can then make my ecosystem interoperable and interchangeable with larger ecosystems as well. So my ecosystem doesn't have to be that big, as long as I can hook it into others that's really big, right? So you don't always have to own the ecosystem, the larger ecosystem. And in many respects, it's unrealistic, except for a few insurers, to be able to do that as well.
Okay, so thank you so much, Hugh. Thank you so much, Simon. I want to remind the breaking news of Hugh to say that this year in 2021, we decided to customize the TDI Academy in order for Latin America with the launching of the CDI Plus Latam training. That is a training with all the content of the TDI Academy and with a lot of teachers like Simon, like you, and a lot of incredible teacher. So thank you so much for that. Hugh, Simon, thank you so much for that. We can greet our friend Nigel, not to be with us, but it will be for the next time. For us, it was a pleasure too, because we could share with you about your 6 global trends. So thank you so much. I know that it's quite late in Asia, and so I can say see you soon. Matías, we can perhaps close this first conference.
What an opening session, Hugues. Amazing conference. It was like a masterclass. Thank you so much, Simon and Hugh, for sharing such powerful insights to our ecosystem. I want to tell you, to the audience, of course, that the conference will remain on the platform until 30 days after the event ends. So you will be able to watch this conference whenever you want. And in particular, we had a technical issue with the Spanish translation. So this conference will be available in Spanish, translated to Spanish as well from tomorrow. So do not lose the next conferences that we have today for you. And nothing more to say. Thank you again, Simon and Hugh, and Hugues, my partner. So see you next, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Bye.